Welcome to Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Yvonne Wolf, and today our special guests are Jenny Levin and Rena Rosen. Jenny is a teacher at District 34, Hanking Elementary School, and Rena is a preschool teacher in Skokie. They together have written a book called The Courage to Be Kind. Can you tell us about how you came up with this topic?
Sure. I had been speaking at different schools about differences and physical disabilities, and we have been friends for a while now, and we started talking about how we approach children and teach about differences and talk about what you see in the public.
And so Rena had been posting a few things on social media about what to do when you see somebody that looks different and what can you tell your child and how do you kind of approach that situation. And I felt ill-equipped as a parent and a teacher to really navigate that. And so I looked for some different books to help teach that and couldn't find anything. So I said to Rena, hey, I really have liked what you've been posting. It's really interesting to me. What do you think about writing a book together? And that's where it started.
Wow, that's interesting because we see this happening as we become a parent, right? And that, and also your experiences in classroom, right? Both of you and with elementary students, small children, that you find this a wonderful teaching moment.
Right. Always looking for teachable moments, definitely.
Yes. So, and you first time working together on a book?
Yes.
And how did that work out? Do you find is it difficult? Does one of you come up with a draft or an outline and the other person look at it, or do you both say this is what we're going to write about?
I think we really worked well together. I think it was a complete mutual collaboration. We definitely had different skills that contributed to the book. I think we both had great ideas that facilitated the whole process. I came with it with the perspective of someone who had gone through the situations in the book, having been born with physical differences, and Jenny had come to it from the parent perspective of what would you want to happen in the situations from that perspective. And as teachers, I think we both came at it with mutual understanding of how to phrase certain things and how we wanted it to be read to different age groups.
Yes, and how did you select the number of differences? I mean, was that hard? Did you have to weed out something, or did you feel like, well, we got to make a bigger book or a book too? You know,
so in our early conversations, we tried to really keep a vision. Like, what do we want it to look like? We wanted, when we were looking and thinking about the book, to really capitalize on people that looked different but didn't necessarily have any mental differences. That could be a fully functioning person, but people might not necessarily think that they are based on the way that they looked. And so kind of having that idea, it helped weed out a lot of things. Also, we wanted to bring about differences that were apparent but weren't written about widely. There's lots of books about other illnesses or differences, but not as many about this and not as many about covering all the different types that we tried to cover. So we came up with a list and kind of weeded out, and then also wanted the situations to seem organic. And so trying to figure out how a kid could find somebody that would have that difference and making sure that it all fit. So just talking back and forth, we thought this would work, what do you think about this? There's a lot of trial and error. And just a lot of nice meetings of, okay, what do you think about this? And texts back and forth for a long time.
Okay, so not always physically meeting with each other, right?
Right.
Just using communication tools.
So we did. We also met in my backyard every other week for a while, once a month sometimes, depending on my kid's schedule. Rena would come over after the girls went to bed, and we'd sit in the backyard or sit on my couch and just discuss the book and write together. And what do you think about this wording? And so we would do kind of a scenario at a time and really hammered it out that way, because the book is broken up into 7 different scenarios. So that's how we worked it out.
We also, in the book, we included actual images of children or adults that have those physical differences or syndromes.
Yes.
And having been that I graduated with a photography degree, I used that element to help contribute to the book also.
The illustrator, right? Because, tell us a little bit about that. How do you find an illustrator? How do you find a publisher?
So the publisher, we went with the self-publishing, which had its benefits of being published. It also had its challenges of needing to. This was our first time writing a book, so I think it was a learning process for us along the way. And the illustrations came with the publishing team. They had an illustration team that helped us along the way. We gave them every bit of information we could possibly need for illustrations.
Such as photos that you have?
Well, we had photos along with the illustrations.
Okay.
But for the illustrations, it was everything from hair color to, we wanted the differences to really look like someone you might come into contact with on a daily basis.
Right.
And height and gender and,
not stylized.
Right.
Right? Because this is, but you don't want actual picture of a. Well, yes. How about that? Did you think about that? Did you think maybe we should have used, actual photos? Or
well, we have both.
Yes.
We have both in the book.
Yes.
So we did the illustration so that it would be geared towards different age groups. So the younger kids tend to really
Gravitate
like
towards
the
the
illustrations, and
yeah.
it can make it more easy to understand.
Right.
And then older kids like the photographs. They both like the photographs because they can look at it in different ways. So the illustrations really help tell that story, and the photographs really give kids the ability to look at a picture of somebody that looks different, a real picture of somebody, and think like, oh, what's going on, and really form their own opinions and give them the time to really process and feel very safe. The illustration process was different because we had never done anything like that before. And so the illustrator came back with a picture of the main character, both of the main characters. We're like, oh, that's not what we had in mind. We need to change the age, and we needed the child to look a few years younger than what we were looking at.
Right,
and we wanted the girl, who's the main character, Ellie, in the book, to look very cute, but also have a difficult time making nice choices, making good choices.
Yes,
and so we wanted that to be conveyed kind of through the way she looked. And so that was really important. Also, just the background. What was up on the background? Where were they? What were the other people doing? All these different things that we had no idea, no concept of. This is what we needed to tell the illustrator. And the more specific we got, the better the illustrations came back. So when we first got those illustrations back, it was very exciting to see all of the hard work and the text that we'd put in come to life through the illustrations.
You have to be that specific.
No,
right?
no.
But I like how the situations that you came up with were very typical, right? In the supermarket or in the public places. It's not just in the playground.
Right. Because that's where we tried to think of where might a kid see somebody that looks different in a supermarket, on a soccer field, in a classroom, maybe not even in their own classroom. Just where do people come in contact with other people?
Yeah. So how have you used the book? Have you used it in your preschool classroom or in the second grade classroom?
So we've used it when we've spoken at schools. I've taken it with me. I've incorporated it into my own classroom on a different level because with preschoolers it's a different conversation than it would be with second graders.
Yes, it'd be shorter, right?
Shorter, and they gravitate more towards illustration. So instead of showing them every image, the conversation shifts a little bit. Yeah. I've had students of mine that have bought the book and it's their favorite book for bedtime, and so it's become part of their routine and it's now part of their conversation. So during the day in our classroom, when we talk about differences, they'll say, oh, like in The Courage to Be Kind, that's, everyone's different and that's okay. And it's a wonderful thing to see.
That is.
For me, it was cool because as a teacher of second grade, we're always talking about the writing process. And in second grade, second graders do not like to edit their writing. They like to write it once and be done, and they're good to go. So being able to show them, look, I'm working on a book, and these are all of the times that I had to go back and edit it. Here's all of the changes, and this was a real book. And it wasn't just something that could be done really quickly. It was something that took time. So talking about it through the writing process was one whole huge conversation that was great for the students to have. And then the other side, talking about the courage to be kind, they were very interested in seeing what that was about and having something to talk about. And my own children have enjoyed reading it and seeing it. For my students, I had already read it several times. So I was like, oh, you guys don't want to hear this again? They're like, no, we do. I was like, really? I feel like I've read it so many times. Aww. But being able to read it to them was really good because based on their questions and their comments, I was I would text Rena and it was like, oh, we have to change this. There was one time where we were reading it and there was a picture, an illustration of somebody in a walker, and we had said in the wheelchair or vice versa.
We had to change
And
it.
so we realized, so reading it out loud to a group of students was really helpful because we were able to gauge understanding and get questions out that way and then edit based on their feedback.
Well, this reminded me of, I don't know if you ever watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and he had been one of the first to introduce a young man in a wheelchair and talk about the differences. Do you feel like that has kind of a springboard to like other conversations we can have?
Yeah, definitely. I think it opens up a whole new opportunity to have different conversations.
And have you done other, I guess, publicity or marketing for this book?
We're still working on that as two teachers who are very busy during their day lives and having other things. That's something that we both want to do and want to continue doing and promoting the book and finding the right outlets that can give us good publicity. But the response that we've gotten so far has been overwhelming, and it was really cool for working on the book for so long. It took us almost 2.5 years to really write the book and get it out there. And so it was a slow process of like, okay, we'll wait 2 weeks for the publisher to get back to us. And then we had a week for edits and things like that. So it was very slow. And then the book came out and it was like, boom, everything like took off really quickly. So it was exciting, but also very overwhelming all at the same time. So we're always looking for new opportunities. My friend in Ohio actually just asked if we could come to her school, which would be awesome because that's a whole nother market and a whole nother area that we've never gotten to. I have a friend that moved to Hong Kong and she got the book in Hong Kong. So it's very cool to know that it's reaching different areas and not just in Glenview, which is great.
And I think social media has been a huge support in that area. Being able to find different communities of typical developing children and families and kids with differences and their families, it's really opened up a new community to bring the book to in different areas.
And how fast the communication can be done, right?
We just published this book in February, and within 3 months we had articles written and it just took off really quickly.
Yes, and then on Facebook, you can almost find your community faster, right? Or your community you never heard of will approach you, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Very interesting. Yes. And when would you have the time, right, as teachers, to be doing tours, right? Because most authors are maybe that we have on the program oftentimes are retired and they have more flexible schedule. Yes.
So it has been nice. Rena has been able to go to several schools and camps also to be able to bring the book because her schedule is a little bit more flexible.
Yes.
And that is the goal is that we can bring the book to as many schools and programs as possible so that they can learn from the book and be able to have those conversations.
Yes. And so you mentioned a little bit that took about 2 years, and this is something we have covered in this program too, that experiences with like illustration takes time, right? Illustration can take up to a year. Is that what your experience too with
It didn't take a year for illustrations, but everything was a process. So first it was submit the text, and then it was get the edits back, and then we had to review the edits, and then we wanted to change things about the edits. And then it was get the illustrations. So everything came one at a time, which then got difficult because based on the illustration, we wanted to change the text. But to go back to change the text, it was going to a different team within the publishing company. And we didn't see a full final layout because our book is written so that it's text with illustrations, and then there's a page of photographs, and then there's a page of FAQs based on each scenario.
Yeah, so let's look at that. Maybe you turn to a page that it would be a perfect example of this.
So for example, this was one of our pages. So it was illustration and the scenario, and then right next to it was the FAQ and the photographs.
So all of the illustrations and all of the scenarios are laid out this way. So it's illustrations and text, and then photographs in the scenario, and the FAQ, which is helpful that it's very similar, but as far as layout with the publisher, it got confusing of which text were they talking about. Was it because the top was separate from the middle text, which was the background text? So that process took a long time of we would get the edits back and then we would get the illustrations and then the photographs, and we wanted to have releases for all the photographs.
Of course,
and then
yeah.
one of the photographs didn't work out right at the very end, like
Right. It
literally
was-
right at the very end. So we had to pay extra to like get that changed in the book because it was already in final layout.
I see.
So that
the
process.
photos were taken by, mostly were taken by Rena, or
No,
were they,
so I found many of the people that are in the book are friends of mine or friends of friends of mine,
Right, uh-huh.
or people that I met along the way, and they submitted their own photographs.
I see. And then you have to get released from.
Right.
And I know that Rena, you're also involved with this program called Changing the Face of Beauty. Is it from this program that you met them, perhaps, or?
I met them through some mutual friends. They run a nonprofit that helps to involve people of all differences in media and advertising.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. I thought that was a very
absolutely.
very, very worthwhile program. That,
Absolutely. My friend Katie is the CEO and the founder of it, and she has a daughter with Down syndrome. And when they went into stores, they always noticed that they weren't being as represented as they could be, and that there's a huge community, the largest minority in the world, that isn't as represented in media and advertising. And so they started this organization, this nonprofit, to incorporate more people with physical differences and disabilities into the advertising world and the media.
I see. And how long has this been going on? I think
A few years.
A few years, right? And she has a couch series.
Yes.
That she features different.
I think they've done about 6 or 7 of them now.
Yes, and we will also make this link available on this program,
Great.
so you can
Wonderful.
expand on that message,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That we should beyond maybe acceptance, but just to see different way of representing beauty.
I think there's so many different ways to incorporate inclusion and make it known that disabilities and differences are as valued as anything else.
Yes. Well, my niece uses a wheelchair, and she and her brother are both born with congenital multiple disabilities. So and she recently had want to also do a photo shoot for modeling, and so I think this is very much something
absolutely.
she's very excited about, and she's being 21 this year, right? She also feel like they're not being represented very much in media, which can be changed.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's a good message.
Maybe you can give us one scenario, one story you can share with us on the reception of your book when you have
Sure.
from
So
parents, perhaps, because the students, you hear their response right away, right?
Yes.
And then when they go home, then you hear.
yes, so I had several students that ordered the book on Amazon. They had been a part of the process. They were very excited when it finally came out, and they would bring it to school, and I would autograph. And then I had students from other classrooms that also were finding out and bringing it in, and I would sign the book to them. So that was very exciting. One of the first things that happened when we first published the book within like 2 weeks was it's called SOAR, which is the art recognition, Skokie Outstanding Artist Recognition in Skokie. And they had a big reception for all of the families from all different schools. And it was over 1,000 people at North Shore Center for Performing Arts. And they asked us to speak. And so we got to speak there. And that was an amazing opportunity right at the very beginning to talk about the book and talk about art and our passion for the arts and how it's really important and how it's important to bring life in different ways and how everything can be beautiful. And so that was really exciting to start out that way. It was like huge, and we reached a lot of people and were able to send the message through many different channels. And then we were available at the end and had a few books that people bought and were very excited to see us. So that was really cool.
Well, I know that District 34, as my children go to District 34 too, they have a red day, right?
Yes.
I think it's respect every difference.
Right.
Do you feel that potential that you can work together on?
I would
Well,
love
you
to.
have? I don't know. You
Yes,
have
no.
already?
We have Red Day that comes up in November. The book didn't come out till February.
yes, this year.
So maybe for this coming
year,
one, that would be excellent. Yeah.
This would be a very exciting new year for you.
Yes. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Do you see? Are you now? I mean, this is probably early to think about, but when you're working on this first book, did you see potential that maybe it's a series or a series? Another book or?
I think when we wrote the book, it was our first time ever writing a book, so the process was a labor of love. I have ideas for a second book. I think it's when time allows it. We want to get this book as up and running and as far-reaching as we can before we work on another one. But I definitely see more potential for another book to carry off this.
I agree. I think we can definitely do another one. I think there's still a lot of outlets that we want to go through to get this book out there, a lot of places that we haven't talked to yet. And so I think and also it would be good if we have another book to have those connections already set, like, oh, we contacted you about this one, here's something else that we're doing. So we still have some work to do with this book, and then we'll go from there.
Yes. Well, I know that Whole Foods has some reading, children's reading program as well. They do, and this could be something very, very nice to incorporate. As a children-focused reading time.
That's great.
Yeah.
So that's what I feel like we just keep hearing more and more things that we can do and get involved in, which we love. So the more the merrier, and we'll just continue to keep pushing it and keep seeing where it goes and where it takes us.
Yeah. Well, I think that is obvious. The two of you are very sociable people, which find it a very good opportunity to continue a conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we work really well together. We didn't know each other that well before. We met through mutual friends and had a meal together, and then kind of just were more social media friends.
Yeah.
And then
It just happened very organically.
Yeah.
That's great.
Through the book, it was fantastic. So.
And I think this is a great way for me personally, it's a message I've always wanted to express to other people, and to have a legacy like this that will be here forever and will be able to help children and families. For a writer and for a person, I think that's something really momentous.
I guess there's a general question, like when we see someone who looks different, I wonder myself how to approach that person too. Because my niece and nephew, they both experience sometimes, there some isolation or maybe awkwardness,
Right.
And I'm not really sure. Sometimes when I'm in the supermarket, do I make eye contact, wave, or leave people alone because do they wish to be singled out? You know what I mean? So
Right.
what do you feel that?
I think every situation is different, and so it all depends on what feels most comfortable in that moment. I do know from speaking to friends and for myself personally, a smile and a wave is always a great introduction, and just saying hello will never make someone feel singled out. It'll just make them feel included.
I think a lot of it also is done in the pre-work, which is the point of the book, of if you talk about and you have those conversations before, then it's not as possibly scary or feels weird when you do see somebody that looks different. And so that's why we wanted to include photographs, so that you can see someone that maybe has a big birthmark covering their face, so that when you see someone, it's like, oh, okay, so they have that, but they're still in the grocery store just like I am. Mm-hmm. And as a parent, it's just talking like, oh, look, yes, they're picking out cheese. We're picking out cheese too. They probably like cheese. And just kind of acting the same way you would around anybody else, because they are anybody else. So if you're somebody that would go up and say hi to somebody, that's fine. But to just shun somebody away and make a child feel like, oh, you don't talk about it, like that can be noticeable and make everybody feel bad. Mm-hmm. And that questions aren't bad. It's just making sure that you have the right time to be able to answer them, and hopefully the right tools that you can have to be able to have those good conversations.
Now, was it hard to decide to have a girl and a boy reaction? Do you feel, do you feel, I guess this is a kind of a tough question. Do you feel sometimes in the girls' world, they are more involved, or they are being, maybe the media makes this, how people look, more important to girls? Or do you feel that that's something they pick up faster and sooner?
So I think
aware?
it's an interesting question, because I've had people say, wouldn't you want to make the girl empowered and be like the, strong girl? And
Sorry.
but I think a lot of times boys are singled out as being rough and, careless. And so I think it was a tough decision of how we wanted them to be, how we wanted to portray them.
Yes.
Ellie does learn
Yes, and that's
towards the end of the book.
that's a powerful message.
How-
Being able to learn.
Right, that
Right.
there is room for growth, and that she is not a mean person. She just doesn't understand the appropriate responses and how the right ways to behave. And Sam is able to help her and guide her. So I think it's less about being a mean kid or a nice kid, and rather everyone has the opportunity to learn.
Right. Jenny, do you
I
want
would
to say
agree.
something?
Having two girls, I think I look at things very differently now than I did when I was younger. Even the presents that they get, my girls love to draw,
Yes.
and they get a lot of arts and crafts presents, which are great, but a lot of like fashion designer things and things like that, which is also nice, but I don't know that a typical boy would get that. So in our house,
Right,
everything
right.
seems to be very gender neutral. At least we try to do it that way. Like, you want to be a superhero? Great, go be a superhero. You want to play whatever game it is? Like, we try to not do that, to make sure that everybody feels like it's not girl versus boy. It's just we're all empowered and we all can do whatever we want. There are several things over the many times of reading the book, even at the very end, after it came out, I was like, oh, Rena, we should have done this. Why didn't we think about this? And I was actually reading another person's biography, and she said when she was writing it that it was always an autobiography, and for her it was always going back to the publisher like, oh, I want to do this, this, and this. And he said the publisher told her, at some point you just have to be done. Like, you'll always find something. That's how it is with lessons, with teaching also.
Yes.
I can always go back and change a lesson. I could always do something better. Same with parenting. There's always a situation where it's like, oh, I wish I would have said it this way, or I wish we would have done this. So there's always things that I would go back and maybe look at, and that's kind of what leaves room for another book, also of things that we could do differently.
Well, thank you very much for being on our program.
Thank you for
so
having
much.
us. It was so nice. Wonderful.
And thank you for watching. Join us the next time on Off the Shelf.